welcome to HERPath, the podcast for successful, busy women looking for purpose, health, and happiness. Today, we are going to be talking about feelings and why they suck. So let's dive in. So, of all the things that we're not taught in school, emotional intelligence, in my opinion, is the most tragic missing piece in our education. So think about this. Every single thing that we do in our lives is because of how we think it'll make us feel. And every single thing we don't do in our lives is because of how we think it'll make us feel. So that means every single decision we make, every dream that we achieve or let die, and every relationship we nurture or ruin is based on how we want to feel. So feelings direct our lives, whether we're conscious of it or not. And we naturally avoid negative emotions because they feel bad, right? And then we naturally gravitate towards positive emotions because of how they feel. And so as humans, we're constantly searching out feelings in the night with no understanding of how they actually work. And so we're constantly seeking pleasure to feel good. So we overindulge in food, in drink, drugs, sex, technology, even working. And we become pleasure junkies and just chasing our next high, not understanding how our feelings dictate our lives. And so this is one of the reasons why feelings suck, is because we're not taught how to feel and how to make them work in our lives so that we're able to reach our full potential. In fact, if we don't know how feelings work in our lives, we self-sabotage ourselves without even realizing it. So today I want to welcome you to Feelings 101. What is a feeling? So feelings and emotions, I use those terms interchangeably, but a feeling is simply a vibration in your body caused by a thought in your mind. And I don't want you to confuse a feeling with a sensation, an involuntary sensation in your body. Feelings are caused by what we think, and sensations are involuntary bodily reactions. So for example, feeling hungry or hot or cold, thirsty, sick, or tired are all sensations. The feelings of frustrated, cranky, lonely, sad, agitated, or bored are all feelings. So feelings start in the brain and they travel to the body and their vibrations felt in our body. Sensations start in our body and travel to the brain. So if feelings are simply vibrations in our body, and our body is reacting to what we're thinking, you're probably wondering, well, what's the big deal? And if you're anything like me, the big deal is you were brought up to believe that feeling anything other than positive emotion, so feeling a bad, negative emotion, is bad. And when you do have that negative emotion, in my experience, either a teacher or a parental figure immediately tried to soothe and stop that negative emotion and encourage you to feel a positive emotion. So as a result of that, you concluded that happiness is the goal all of the time. And if you're not happy 100% of the time, something must be wrong. So instead of feeling the negative emotion, we're taught to push it away, to avoid it, pretend that it's not there, everything's okay. So this is the other reason why they suck so much, because when we have that negative emotion, we believe we shouldn't be feeling it and we're pushing it away and feel like something has gone very, very wrong. It cycles into more negative emotion because we're not processing the emotion or allowing it to feel, and it builds up. And then eventually it comes out as a reaction by freaking out or coming up in your body and manifesting as dis-ease in your body. So I want to kind of open that up for what you all think, my co-hosts, of how you have experienced negative emotion in your life, and what the view of it being positive or negative, how that's influenced you in your decisions, relationships, and goals. How about you, Elise?
So I'm going to answer your question, but I'm also going to ask another, because you really showed me something profound that I hadn't thought of before. So I love the conversation about a sensation versus a feeling. And I loved the one that you brought up about hunger. Hunger is a sensation. So it starts in your body and it travels to your mind. But cravings are the opposite, right? Cravings are, they start in your mind and they travel to your body. And I bet that that can be extremely confusing to people who are trying to lose weight, or people who are trying to follow a food protocol. And I hadn't really thought about that back and forth, right? That there's almost a conflict happening where your craving is starting in your mind and moving to your body. Actual hunger starts in your body, moves to your mind, and how to figure out which one is really occurring. So that's where my head has been, because and you all three of you delve into weight loss in your niches. So I know I'm not answering your question, but I just had to throw that out there because it was such a like aha light bulb to me.
I appreciate you, throwing that out there. And my question to my clients when they are struggling with the difference between the sensation of hunger versus a craving is, in that moment, and asking themselves, would eating a chicken breast fix this feeling? Would it stop the feeling of hunger? And if the answer is yes, you're probably hungry. If the answer is no, you're dealing with a craving, that you're wanting something more. You're wanting something probably sweet or salty or carby. I don't know. How about you, Nancy and Gabby?
Yeah,
Go ahead, Nancy. Sorry.
that for sure is well, with something healthy, take that away. And then I also ask my clients to ask themselves, and to ask it at different levels, like, what are you really hungry for? And you get an answer, and then take it another step deeper. What are you really hungry for? Until you really understand it's probably a need that's not being met, for sure.
Yeah. How about you, Gabby, the weight loss doctor?
Yes, and just like you mentioned it, I've used that example many times and been in that situation so many times. I think we've all been in that situation where you are so hungry, or you are hungry, and you could be presented with the most mundane meal, a healthy meal, quality meal, chicken. I always use chicken and broccoli too, because we all know chicken and broccoli, and there's nothing amazing about it, but it's nutrition. It's nutritious. It'll do the job. But if you have that chicken and broccoli in front of you and you're hungry, but you think, Jack in the Box sounds much better right now. Or a margarita actually sounds much better. That would be me, margarita. A margarita sounds much better right now. Or a piece of cake would be much better right now. Then it's not true hunger. It's emotional hunger, or there's something else going on. It's a craving, some unmet need, like you mentioned, Nancy, that is really kind of triggering that craving.
Yeah, I like the way you said that, the emotional hunger. It's not true hunger, like differentiating the difference, and it takes practice. It's not something that you do once and oh, yep, I got it. It's a lot of practice.
Something that you said though, that I was triggered by, was the feeling. You had stated something that how we we think about feelings in a way, because what came to my mind was, sometimes I do things because I don't want to hurt somebody else's feelings, or I don't want to make someone feel bad, or I don't want to make someone feel angry about me. So my feelings are not always, I can't always control other people's feelings. And so sometimes I have to do things so that I can keep other people happy or not have to make them angry. And I used to think that for the longest time also. But really, it still comes down to your actions are about how you feel about how the other person may react. And that was a mind-blowing thing to me. Like, what? I am dictating my actions because how I'm going to feel about how somebody else is going to feel, and sometimes to my own detriment. And maybe I don't really have to worry about how the other person's feeling, because they're in charge of their own feelings and I'm in charge of my own feelings. And that was such a mind-blowing concept when I learned about it. So when you were describing about feelings and how they work, that was what immediately came to my mind, how a lot of the actions that we take, even though we think it's going to be because of how somebody else may react, and that's why I do these things, because I don't want to make this person upset. I don't want to make that person. No, it's about how I'm going to feel about the other person's reaction.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Well, clearly we hit a topic here that feelings suck. I've triggered two of you. How about you, Nancy? Did I trigger you as well?
I guess I don't feel triggered so much as just, really curious on those. And I was never taught feelings growing up. We never discussed them at all. I don't know that, thinking back, that really, if I had a feeling, I had to be sent to my room. And so for me, it's been a very new process of feeling my feelings, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like when we experienced a negative emotion as children, we were not taught how to feel that feeling.
And it wasn't okay.
And it wasn't okay. We were taught to avoid it or to push it or to pretend that we're okay.
A lot of pretending.
A lot of pretending. But I want to remind all of us and our listeners that we are meant to have negative emotions.
Mhm.
And the reason we are meant to have negative emotions is because that is what makes positive emotions possible. So if you don't feel sad, you don't know what happiness feels like. Without hate, there's not love. Without connection, you wouldn't know what feeling lonely would be like. And so we can't go around life only experiencing positive emotions all of the time, because then we don't have the contrast of life. Our emotional life is meant to be 50-50. And there are times in our life where we want to feel negative emotion, like when somebody that we love or care for dies. We want to feel sad. We want to be in grief. Awful things in the world happen, and we don't want to feel positive about that. There's awful, awful things in the world. I don't think I need to mention any of them. We just turn on the news for 5 seconds and you'll see what's going on. But because we're not taught how to feel those emotions and that they're okay, that's when they can build up. And I want to remind everybody too that the only thing that is happening is a vibration in your body, even if it's negative. If it's positive, it's a vibration in your body. So a feeling of excitement is maybe some butterflies in your stomach and, just a little kind of on edge. But the actual vibration of excitement is very similar to the feeling of nervousness in your body. It's just the concept in our head, what we make it mean. And so many of us have this belief that negative emotions are going to hurt us. And I want to challenge you all to think about why it hurts. It's not because it's physically intolerable. Like even the worst emotion that you can imagine, you can survive. It does not hurt you. So like imagine if there was a way for me to inject an emotion into your body for 60 seconds. And I'm going to warn you and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to inject humiliation into your body and you're going to feel it vibrating throughout your body for 60 seconds. You can handle it, no problem. You'll feel maybe flushed in your face, kind of little heart racing a little bit and kind of sweaty. And it's not the end of the world. But what happens is when we feel like we can't handle negative emotion, we start to resist it and then it compounds and it makes them worse. And that's when we begin, that's what suffering is we're suffering through these emotions because we're pushing against it and resisting it. And, it's like trying like a beach ball. I know we've all used this metaphor before, like having a beach ball is your emotion and you're trying to push it down underwater and you're resisting it. At some point, it's going to bubble up to the surface and you're going to have a reaction versus just letting the beach ball sit there, float, and you hold it and let it be a vibration in your body and allowing it to do that. I think in the previous podcast, we talked about some emotions and how it feels like a wave coming up and overwhelming. And like, it's like a tsunami, like it's going to like consume you. However, if you can sit there and let it be, it passes and then the storm is gone and everything's calm again. And I'm curious what you think, Nancy, about processing an emotion, both positive and negative, like the difference between the two would be for you.
Well, I know it just brought up something that we talked about last podcast, is that feeling of anxiety I had for so long. And I finally asked myself, okay, what does this sensation feel like? And for me, it was a sensation when I was going into the anxiety and panic of going down a very steep roller coaster where your stomach feels like it just comes up. And I thought, man, I love that feeling. And now I'm making it mean something else. And so when I just focused on that, okay, I'm going on a roller coaster ride now, it really helped me to reframe that feeling and to really feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about the perception of what that feeling is going to do for us.
When you label it and get to know it, you can really change it.
Right. How about you, Gabby?
I was thinking about very similar to what you mentioned, Nancy. As a family medicine doctor, not all of my patients are my favorites. Some challenge me in ways that bring up, some negative feelings. And before, when I would see them on my schedule, just get that kind of pit in the stomach, that just kind of feeling of, I really would rather not do this, but over time, just like you mentioned, Nancy, making it feel like it's going to be kind of like a roll. I love roller coaster rides. I love feeling that thrill. And it gives that similar emotion, that kind of a little bit of feeling a little bit of on edge, like something's going to happen. And so that's what I flipped my thoughts around that feeling, instead of it being a dread, more of a thrill and almost like a curiosity at the same time. Like, let's see how we're going to end this encounter. And that really made a difference in how I even showed up for my problematic patients in a way that made it much more beneficial for the both of us. And it really made it even better medical care. And I've gotten more compliance with showing up with, kind of an excitement and curiosity versus like dread and, oh my God, they're not going to like the idea of taking another medication, or, oh, they're not going to want to go see the specialist. Oh, they're going to be upset that I'm going to, recommend that, they XYZ, you'd plug it in and be like, let's see what, they may surprise me. Today may be the day.
Yeah, I love that. And you're not able to hold two opposite emotions at the same time. You can't have a positive and a negative emotion at this, it's either one or the other. And so going into, something with dread and judgment and flipping, like you said, you're like flipping the script of curiosity and a thrill or excitement. It completely changes the energy that you're going into your clients with. Yeah. How about you, Elise?
Yeah, so two powerful things came up for me. So first of all, while you were talking about how we're never taught about feelings, and we're, as kids, nobody ever talks about that. And I immediately thought of the Disney movie Inside Out. And I don't know if any of you have seen that, but that literally is a movie about teaching kids about emotions. It's, you're inside some little girl's head, and there's a little joy person, and there's a sadness person, and there's the anger person, and I think there's the nervous person. And it teaches kids about core emotions and where they live and how they come up. And it does actually teach you about, you can't be sad and happy at the same time. But if you're not sad, you never get to experience joy, right? It was just, I never thought of that movie as a teaching moment until you brought this up. So kudos to Disney for whatever
Yay.
it's worth, right?
Sure.
And if you listeners are not familiar with, your feelings and how they all work, watch that movie. It's cute, it's entertaining, but it really does teach you. So that was the first thing that came up. Second of all, for me, when I started this work, I had such fear of putting myself out there, fear of writing about me, fear of being vulnerable, fear of what people would think of me. And every time I went to do anything, take any kind of action, this fear would wash over me. And just like Gabby said, at some point I had to flip that switch. I said, I cannot do this if I'm going to feel this way. Like I would have to take a deep breath, hold my breath, close my eyes, and hit send to put an email out. Like there was just fear. So I flipped it to possibility. All right. You're taking a risk, you're taking a chance, but what if it works? So I still have that same tingly, but I'm associating it with what if it works, instead of the fear of being really vulnerable, or the fear of what, my old corporate people, colleagues will be thinking of me, or the doubters or the haters or whatever. It took some work, and I still have to go back there sometimes, like, oh, this is not fear. This is what if it works? But that's been a complete game changer for me in being able to take risks and try new things and be innovative in my business.
I love that. Thank you. And both of you sharing, like flipping the switch, like a reframe of the feeling. Curious just to touch briefly on feeling the feeling. Because what you both are describing is just so innate for all of us humans. We want to feel better. No, I don't want to feel fear, but curiosity. I can feel curious and do this action, or do this what I told myself I would do. But in those moments, like Nancy had experienced, like that feeling washing over her, like have you had any experience that profoundly taught you or changed you, where you were able to just sit in that emotion that you didn't want to sit in, rather than pushing it away, rather than flipping it, but just being in the yuck, being in the suck.
Yeah. I think for me, being able to flip it, I had to sit in the suck, right? You can't just, at least I can't just say, okay, I don't like this feeling. I'm going to switch it to this. In order to get to that point, you've got to sit in it. You've got to sit in it. You've got to identify it. You've got to find out the why. Why do I feel this way? Ask the questions. Really just marinate in it and come to a point where I know why I'm feeling this. I know it's a story. I don't know that it's true. I have no control over anyone else. I only have control over myself. And what's the worst that can happen? You know, how do I want to show up in this space? And what would my future self tell me about? Like that's kind of the mantra that I go through, but it takes time, but you have to sit in it while you're asking those questions. And I don't think that you can flip the switch until you've done that work.
Yeah, thank you. I think, yeah, that's so true. It's like once you sit in it, then you have authority over it to be able to switch it.
I think
Authority.
the most recent example I could give you was a time when I don't know what it was. I was really moody about something. I was really irritable. And it was one of those days where nobody could please me at home. I was just on a rampage. I literally was probably yelling, probably really. And one of my sons, he just looked at me, really wasn't reacting. I was like, Mom, you're being irrational. You know, what's going on with you? It just doesn't make sense. And I just sat there. I was like, he's right. I didn't jump to, don't you talk to me like that, and try to get defensive and, change the subject and throw my balls out there and be like, I'm your mother. This is just how it is. I did allow myself to sit in that. I'm like throwing a tantrum. What is going on with me? And allowed that funky mood to kind of just put it on a low simmer and examine myself instead of looking outward to figure out like, what is going on with me? Where is this coming from? And that was a really, profound kind of moment for me, because that's nothing that I was ever taught before, nothing that would have ever done before. It's to allow, that moodiness and irritability to just kind of wash through. But it took an outside kind of, of someone who I love dearly, kind of input to bring that to light. And in that moment, I'm like, okay, it's okay for me to be moody and irritable. Doesn't mean I have to, distract from that internal feeling by blaming everybody else around me.
Yeah, that's so great. How about you, Nancy?
I think a good tantrum is very underrated. I love a good tantrum.
What does
I
a
have
tantrum
too
look
many
like for you,
tantrums.
Nancy? I got to know.
I think it helps us integrate things, because I think if you don't process feelings, they just come back in different forms. So I think actually just being with it, and a tantrum for me, I don't do them publicly. I have a wiffle ball bat actually, and I'll smack it against a tree outside. For me, that's integrating a lot of emotion. And then I'll hug the tree afterward.
Getting it out. That's awesome. I love that. I just wanted to wrap up, like in summary, like that I want to remind our listeners and myself as well that negative emotion is part of being a human and that nothing has gone wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And when you allow it, or when you get it out, when you have a safe temper tantrum, you do get authority over it. And when you start to resist it and deny it and run away from it, that's when you suffer. And so if you found this podcast at all helpful, please share it with your friends. And until next time, have a wonderful week and live with purpose, health, and happiness. Talk to you later. Hey, one more thing before we leave. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. We are certified professional coaches, but this broadcast is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice. Okay, thanks for listening. See you next week.